Sky Upperson. I'm Sky Upperson with the Mustang Adoption Academy. We run a veterans program called Mustangs of Service, where we invite veterans to come in and help us gentle Mustangs, and along the way they help the Mustangs, and guess what? The Mustangs help the veterans.
Thank you. My name is Chloe Garrison. I'm with the Horses and Humans Research Foundation. Our mission is to fund research and provide educational programming to expand the global knowledge around horse-human interactions and the health and wellness benefits to both horses and humans. We have funded 3 studies to date on horse-human interactions with veterans, all with positive outcomes. So excited to contribute to the field in that way.
My name is Russell Granger. I'm with 10th Mountain Equine, which is a nonprofit in Colorado. We do horse rescue, and we also do equine-assisted therapy or activities. I was a volunteer firefighter for about 15 years, and also a volunteer ski patroller for about the same period of time, 15 years. Also worked with EMS with the ambulance for about 5 years. I didn't like that as well, but as firefighting, because it takes too long to do a call. We've worked with people with different types of mental trauma, and a lot with veterans. We're beginning to work more with first responders. My interest is in first responders in a rather specific area. There are some studies regarding, well, 2014 there was a study just regarding firefighters that their stress level went up. When they have a stressful call, their mental bias of whether or not they're positive or negative when they have stressful calls, they're just biased towards negative kind of across the board. And there is a trend with not just firefighters, but people in the first responder services, that when they've had stressful calls and specific types of calls, that if they don't have some form of intervention, the overwhelming majority of them will resign within a couple of years. There's always a reason that they find, that they don't have time anymore, whatever. But when you think of the resources, whether you're paid or volunteer, the resources that go into getting somebody through their medical training, through their Firefighter 1 training, through their Firefighter 2 training, all of that resources that go in, and then they do a specific, usually it's a high stress call. I had a call, and I fit into that, where a few years after a particular call involving a fatality involving a state trooper, and within 3 years, I didn't have time anymore, and I just kind of faded away. And I don't want to see others go through that as well. So.
Wow, that's amazing. My name is Julie Robbins. I'm the founder of the Horsemanship Academy, and most recently a nonprofit called the Leg Up Experience. We partner with agencies to be one tool in their mental health toolbox to proactively support mental health. We offer an immersion style where a group from an agency will come out and spend a day with us. Think about the impact of swimming with dolphins might have had on someone's life. This is a unique experience, an immersion where we have them get a connection with the horse, develop some trust, create a bond in a safe environment with their peers in order to create a memory that they can reach back on and support. We also have found, surprisingly, which is interesting, the leadership skills that come out of working with horses has been another side benefit. So we are relatively new. We're located here in Aiken, South Carolina, and our current partner is Aiken Public Safety, which encases our police, fire, and ambulance. Public safety lady.
I'm Tammy Hansen, and I'm with the Aiken Volunteer Mounted Unit. We founded the unit 6 years ago. Aiken had a sworn mounted officer. Actually, they had 2, and they would go to all the football games, and you always saw them around town. Sonny Ford. He passed away, and so the Aiken Department of Public Safety doesn't have the funds to do another mounted unit, so we made this one under Aiken Public Safety. So we do all kinds of events, whatever they want us to do, whatever the community wants us to do. We only do 2 or more horses. Today, I have my Mustang, that's why I'm here. She's a wonderful horse, but generally we wouldn't just go out and have 1 horse. So we do nursing homes, we do summer camp all summer on a Friday. We went to the park, and children, I think we had 62 children stroking, loving, brushing the horses. We had one little girl that was absolutely terrified the first day. She cried and cried and cried, would not come near, and at the end she was hugging the horse. So I think it's a really good thing for them.
So what do we do now?
Anybody have any questions about any of our agencies?
I do. Just in
You
general.
might want to, we hate to do this, but they don't want to miss the, come sit here and,
Here, I'll hold the mic.
Hold on. I don't know if I can. Yeah.
come over here.
Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Lindsay. I'm actually here with Casey Fire Department. We have a pet therapy program with a mini horse, and she helps support our first responders and actually run more fatal overdoses than we do fires. So one of the initiatives in my job is trying to educate the public on our drug awareness messaging and support people in recovery. And this little mini horse, she helps me do it. She comes to work with me once a week. But my question is, do any of y'all have experience with like mental health horse therapy in populations of substance use disorder or addiction? I know in Canada there's been some research, but I haven't seen much in the U.S. I'm just curious if that could be an evidence pathway for people to get treatment and help.
Good question. Who's going to answer?
And I haven't worked, I have not worked specifically with addiction, but my understanding is a lot of what we do is very similar, and that, you know, our program, we don't try to come in, we invite them to come to us. We don't talk about it as being a mental health program. It's more of, hey, you're just going to help me. And then they start, and we do have a mental health professional on staff, but then they start to learn tolerance levels and things like that. And so if we can kind of reverse some of the things that are leading to their particular issue, or with, you know, their traumatic experience popping up, then we can start to push those boundaries a little bit. They also start to learn a little bit about their own tolerance levels, not just the tolerance levels of the horse. I'm rambling a little bit, but and through that, then they start to identify their own things instead of us going, hey, what's wrong with you? And so I think it could work very similarly. I just have not had any particular experience in that.
I would say some of our studies, especially as it relates to veterans, alcohol addiction, drug addiction is obviously a byproduct oftentimes of symptoms of PTSD or depression and anxiety. So it's certainly rolled into some of the studies that we have done. And again, showcasing the positive outcomes of equine-assisted psychotherapy and therapeutic riding on that population. But I would invite you to actually encourage us to go down that path. That's one thing that we're starting to ask our community of followers and supporters and donors is, what do you want to know about the horse-human interaction? Whether it's population-specific or it's the science behind synchronization of the horse and the human. We really encourage you to submit those topics to us, because the more that you want to know, the more we can lead that research. So
We haven't done anything with substance abuse, really, at least that I'm aware of.
Speak up a little bit.
I guess, no.
Yeah. So in my previous work with veterans, what comes along with veterans is addiction. And I think for some of them, our unique experience of being in an outdoor environment all day, it serves as a way to break a pattern, if you will. But again, the idea behind it, and I think with horses, is to create some self-awareness, to me, addiction is very much internal. And when you're around horses, it sort of shifts the focus to the external. But it would be very interesting to see on a more of a study basis with Chloe's organization how that would happen. But there should be a proactive path utilizing the way of the horse to sort of shift the mindset in there for sure. And I would think there would be funding for that.
Now, do you work with, in KC, do you work with addiction and stuff with your minis?
So, okay. So specifically, I'm a grant-funded position. I wanted to get off the fire truck and do work daytime hours so I could do more with my horses. That's kind of how that came about. And I kind of relate to some of the stuff you said about just getting burned out, and it takes its toll on you. And we're not taught good coping skills as first responders. You're just kind of given your initial training, and you just have to figure it out. And I think that leads to a lot of just self-destructive behaviors, because you're just not given the tools to handle that. So I very much relate to that. But specifically, I wrote my middle mini horse's name is Muffin as more of a prevention side, because no one's asking the fire department to come to their school and talk about like drugs. They want the fire safety, they want the fire truck, they want the firefighters. They don't want us talking about substances. There's a lot of stigma to that. And so I was like, how am I gonna get engagement for this topic? So I was like, well, what if I train my mini horse to be a therapy horse? We pass the test, I get approval from my city, and we do this. And it happened. We did it.
Awesome.
And yes, very thankful for my leadership for supporting such a creative thing, because they definitely could be like, oh no, but they didn't. So very thankful for the city of KC and all that. But so what that's led to is we've expanded from the prevention side to going to recovery organizations. And like, I'm not a mental health professional. I am a firefighter EMT. That's my background. But we just go and we just support what's already in place. Like having a horse like in a therapy environment, or like people like in chairs or on a circle, and they just sit in the chairs and they just pet Muffin, they walk by, and we just talk about how horses can help, and they feed off our energy, just like a little basic lesson. It's very in its infancy stages, but that's kind of what I do, and I think it could be a huge benefit to the community. The state of South Carolina has received a huge amount of opioid settlement money, and I'm wondering if something could be developed with that's evidence-based to help these people, because they might not want to go to a treatment center, but they might want to come spend time with the horse, and that's how you could reach them. So that's my heart in it, and I'm just trying to learn more, and I'm learning myself. That's kind of what we do. So, yes.
Thank you. Awesome. You should be on this conference.
I know. What is
Something-
the question about using some of that money?
Yeah.
That will start and help it.
They fund the mini horse right now, our program. So if I could fund a mini horse, could it be something bigger?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We should connect.
And good.
I think you really hit the nail on the head. In my work with Aiken Public Safety, the biggest challenge has been the stigma of mental health. Even talking about it, admitting, you're a firefighter, how can you be afraid? You're a police officer, nothing bothers you. But the reality is it does. And I know one of the most common coping mechanisms is humor, very dark, teasing each other, dark humor. But I do think that the horse has made, I know in just our limited time with Aiken Public Safety, it has absolutely transformed the idea. But again, our chief, Baranko, who is very proactive on the mental health.
Horses.
He loves horses, has come through, and they're just finding the whole idea, very much to like your approach, is proactive. How can we step out and get ahead of it? And utilizing horses, if anything, just breaks that stigma. The other thing, and you did share with me that you're being paid to be here today, which I think is amazing. Yeah. So when the members of the agency come through our program, it is a paid day. So that's how they support. A second thing they've done is, in order to get their raise as an officer with the agency, they have to go to mental health. So if they don't go to their annual therapy session, they don't get their raise. And what that has done is just gone through and broken the stigma. And so I think the work with the horses is a great way to step in and do that, but would love to continue to explore that, because prevention is the cure.
Julie, what do you do in your program?
Our program is a very unique program that teaches participants about the body language of horses, the language of horses, how to communicate, and then we take that out into the round pen where they actually get to work with horses. So they start out with minis, which is really fun. Minis tend to break the ice. They make everybody laugh. We work with, as a group, we work with a group of loose horses, and then they step forward and actually handle individual horses themselves. And then we break for lunch, and then we actually go through and explain how a connection happens with a horse. And after lunch, they get the opportunity to go in and have an individualized connection with a primary horse. Then we do a debriefing to discuss all that we've done and learned, and then we have a dinner that kind of wraps it all up. And a key part of this is taking photos and images, which we have a professional photographer, and so they can capture that moment and look back on it. It is almost a place of reflection. Again, I akin it to the swimming with the dolphin. And it gives them the opportunity to bring up difficult discussions in their workplace and in their home place about their feelings. And many times they'll talk about it in the way of the horse. Well, this horse was angry about this and needed to move his feet. So when Dad stomps around and has to go outside, and that's just me kind of feeling better about myself. Again, it just creates a creative way for conversations. And in our partnering with Dana Ridout, who is the therapist for Aiken Public Safety, she puts the science behind it, which is really, really helpful. Because again, I'm just like you. I'm just the horse crazy girl that came up with a crazy idea to spend more time with horses and hopefully help people in the process.
And they're all Aiken Public Safety?
At this point, our first partnering agency is Aiken Public Safety, and thanks to Chief Baranko, we've started at the top, and we're working our way down. And then Matt Sawyer, who is most likely going to become our next sheriff after these elections, he is going to put our program into place with Aiken County Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
So we find that partnering with an agency helps the entire agency understand that we are a tool in their mental health toolbox. And then they go, what do you mean a mental health toolbox? And it's like, you don't have one of those. You know, you need one. Everyone in your agency needs one. So again, trying to break that stigma of those components and across the board, I think, in anything.
I have a follow-up question for Julie and for the panel. So you said, no, come on, I'm loud. You can hear me. So you said that people get to work with an individual horse. Do you find, as you're working with people in your therapy programs, that you see certain people are drawn to certain horses? Do you find that a horse has a particular, maybe he's dominant, maybe he's frightened, and do you find people are drawn to horses with a similar issue, for lack of a better word?
Absolutely. I find they're drawn often to something they're seeking. So for example, in one of our participants, they were overwhelmed kind of by coming to this experience and with horses, and they didn't know anything about horses. And there was one of the horses in the group that is just a jokester. And he had rolled and he curled his lip up, and that person said, oh my God, that horse looked like he was having so much fun. I'm going to add some fun because my life is so serious. I picked that horse. So we do that. Sometimes someone that's a little bit quieter, a quieter horse will step in for a connection. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think everybody bonds, whether you're a firefighter or whatever, a human bonds with certain horses better than others. For us, we've dealt with the stigma that is being discussed, with firefighters and police officers of that if you can't deal with an ugly fatal, then you shouldn't be a firefighter. I mean, you just shouldn't, because that's what you do. But we have a Belgian who is a rescue. He's 19 hands, weighs like 1,900 pounds. He's just so sweet and gentle, but gigantic. And that attracts people, attracts firefighters, because he's just so huge. I mean, how can you feel like you're not being macho if you're next to a horse whose back is 6 feet high? You know? And he just, and for him, and we had a Belgian before, Bonnie, who passed away, but they seem to attract veterans and firefighters just because they're big, they're gentle, and they're both had a rough past. The one we have now has had a really rough past, and so I think they can relate to mental trauma.
We don't have a program, so I'll let you touch on that.
So yeah, I'll just tell a little story about a recent veteran that went through our program. On the first day, the first session with us, I passed over a horse, and of course then he wanted to know all about that horse, and I said, well, that's probably the most traumatic horse that I've ever worked with. You're probably never going to get a chance to work with him. You know, and as the sessions went, he was always asking about him, and then like he was really paying attention. He's like, why, when you turn him out to pasture, does he doesn't interact with all the other horses? He'll be, both those horses can get in two pastures. He's always standing by himself. And I said, well, he can't even find safety among horses. And as time went on, we had some slight improvements, and that gentleman one day, I said, why don't you see if you can get him just to follow you back out of the pasture, back to his pen for the night. And amazingly, he made a connection with that horse. And then as he continued to tell his story at the end of the 16-week sessions, he talked about how when he came back from Iraq, he didn't want to be part of the community. He didn't want to be part of his family. And when he saw Whiskey starting to take those steps to be part of a herd, he felt that he could now start to do that same thing.
I have a question. So, I really appreciate the fact that from top down, and taking the stigma away without not harming, but without putting folks out of harm's way. So, like for example, when you all are doing some of the safety planning for some of the men and women that may either be suicidal or you might think, how do you work those pieces out in regards to working with animals, working with horses, but then also giving them a chance that I'm not going to get penalized if I actually seek help to really deal with this real issue that you all know is happening with me, but how do I address it? So how do you do that?
That's me.
That's you.
So I really would credit the leadership in this specific case. Our program is new, and we only have one partnering agency at the moment. So I think how he did it was he stepped up and owned it for himself. And they have had, I couldn't even begin to tell you all the losses they've had within the department. 3 officers have been killed in the line of duty very sequentially. And I think he was human about it. I think he admitted himself he had trouble. He sought therapy. And then as he noticed it in his higher level staff, he would encourage them, support them, and he personally helped pull the stigma out. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, because one of the things is well, if I'm showing signs, then you're gonna pull me off
Right,
from the very thing that I love to do.
exactly.
And so how do you do that without really, hey, we're all human, and yeah, we should react.
Right, and I don't know if you want to speak
Yeah.
to this some more, because
We-
he's lived it.
For us, and that's an issue with military as well, if you're active duty and they will say that you don't have, that there's not a penalty if you seek help because you have PTSD, you just won't ever get promoted again. You know, I mean, but for us, there's a natural way to do that because we're a ranch as well. We're a ranch and we do horse rescue. And so we can have people come up, they're not getting therapy, they're going to help us out at the ranch. And
That is
that,
therapy.
yeah, yes, but that is therapy.
Side door.
But they don't-
Exactly, it doesn't have the
You don't
stigma
have,
of
you don't
the
call it
word.
therapy.
Right, you're,
It's not therapy.
And-
It's an
Enhancing your
experience.
wellness.
It's an
yeah,
equine experience, or it's a ranch experience.
exactly. And
They've
it,
had all the therapy they could handle.
right, and they're,
Hide therapy.
and they may be picking up poop for a while, but it works, yeah, because when you're picking up poop in the middle of a herd, you're around horses and you get to know the horses, and then next thing you know, you're done with that, and so then you're working on haltering them or brushing them or whatever, and you end up doing all of that without ever going to a quote unquote therapy.
Yeah, and kind of the same thing, like we have 2 different flyers, one for you guys that we're going to ask money from to support our program that pulls out all of your heartstrings, and then we have another one that goes to the veterans that just says, you want to tame a wild horse and come help us. And then along the way they start to
Our program, again, being relatively new, that is actually what, in the feedback circles that we've had since our first classes, the feedback has been presented to our officers as a leadership program as a time to come out and help on the farm. So again, the word therapy is not there. But the idea with first responders, more so than veterans, I think veterans, they're done with their duty and they're in a transition phase, like it or not. But I believe active duty military personnel as well as first responders that are still in the line of duty, that's a very different person who is still career minded. So I think setting them up as coming to help with a project is really the key way. And you know, if some other benefit comes out for you, well, that's cool.
Hang on to it.
Could you tell us some more about your research?
Sure.
Conclusions?
Specifically related to veterans or just in general? Well, they've kind of run the gamut in terms of audiences and populations that they've been focused on, from autism, youth, adults, cerebral palsy, anxiety, PTSD. As it relates to veterans, we've funded 3 studies, one of which was with equine-assisted psychotherapy with the EQUUS model. The other 2 were with therapeutic riding under PATH International certifications. All were mixed in terms of men versus women, no specific breed of horse, no real parameters on that front. But again, multiple assessments around self-efficacy, coping skills, emotion regulation, stress, anxiety. Studies range from 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the study. All saw positive outcomes, most of which are self-reported, but it is a mix of quantitative and qualitative data. I think one of the biggest gaps that we see as a foundation and one of the largest responsibilities that we have is how do we not only fund this critical research that validates what the practitioners and the participants are witnessing, but how do we share that more broadly? Because, I mean, honestly, research isn't always the most fascinating read, and it's not always digestible. So how do we share it in a way that is digestible, that gets people excited, not just within the therapeutic space, but a broader understanding of horse human interactions across the board, so that maybe there is more encouragement to explore programs that don't have that therapy tagline that one might seek out on their own, or could be included in a toolbox like you were speaking to. Does that help a little bit?
We've done some research and have worked with other organizations that have done research, and more specifically with Dr. Gerke, who is on our board and a friend of ours, and that's utilizing heart monitors to determine the balance in your nervous system, and doing a before and after of a therapeutic session. And this is not expensive to do. I mean, I could do it right now with you because I've got a program on my phone, and what it does is it measures the time between your heartbeats. And if you are more stressed, that time between your heartbeat is more uniform. It's because it's just your heart's just beating, and you tend to be more, that's what happens when you're more stressed. When you're more relaxed and your nervous system is more imbalanced, that interval between the heartbeats is not uniform. It'll be bump, ba-bump, bump, ba-bump. And so you can measure that, And what we found helpful with that is that is objective. You can't control that. It's physiological, it's objective, and we found rather significant changes in someone that goes through a therapeutic session. And something that we've also found is that it is long-lasting, that you can go through a program that is a couple of weeks long, once a week, and then come back in a month and you are still showing improvement. And so it's not just you go through a session, you feel better for 10 minutes, you get in your car, you're in traffic, and all of a sudden you're all messed up again. It has a longer lasting. You can look up. I can get you a site if you like academics and you want to read some academic papers. There are some. We have some public. Whether we didn't publish them, Dr. Gerke published them, that are evidence-based and they're peer-reviewed.
Can I tack on to that?
Yeah.
It made me think of a recent study we did in 2019 that was evaluating the psychological and physiological impacts of therapeutic riding, that was the EQUUS model, with veterans. And they did heart rate variability, they measured cortisol levels, oxytocin levels, but what I love about it, one area that HHRF wants to expand is not only what's the impact on the human, but what's the impact on the horse. Because especially with veterans or PTSD, things like that, that's a very specific energy that they're bringing to that interaction that could have a negative consequence. So we would love to see more studies around equine well-being, especially in these therapeutic settings, whether it's riding or psychotherapy. But what you were mentioning made me think of that, so thank you.
And we've tried to do work exactly what you're referring to with the horse. That's really difficult. We found it anyway to be very, very difficult. With a human, you can tell a person, put your thumb right here and just sit there for 30 seconds. The horse, we're having a harder time getting them to put their hoof on the little monitor, right? Well, you need you can't, with a stethoscope, you can't really count, you can't measure it. Yeah, you need a monitor. Yeah, you need a monitor that, yeah.
So Wes Taylor does, I've seen in his, some of his seminars where he's got a belt that he puts around the horse and measures, I don't know whether it's heart rate or heart rate variability, but, and you can watch, it's really interesting. I mean, and just sitting here even before you said the horse or the human and the horse, I was like, oh, well, it'd be a great study at our place because we could do both at the same time.
Yeah, and it was fascinating. There was really no change for the horse that they documented. There was one outlier, but it was a horse that was new to the program. So in conjunction with the program staff, talked about kind of adaptability, introducing new horses to programs like this, training that goes into it, and preparation. So that was one outlier in the study, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and I would think, so with us, like our horses are they're fresh Mustangs, so they're just off the range. We certainly are not going to get that belt on them in the first day, but maybe day two. But not too far with most of them. We could do that while they're still learning a lot of the stuff in the gentling process. So another thing that I wanted to bring up, and I kind of like your program's a little bit proactive, actually, working with them before maybe something happens. If we could get, our military spends 8 to 10 weeks tearing down our veterans to be able to do what they do, and I understand why they do that. I'm okay with that. But if they could be proactive and spend 8 to 10 weeks to discharge them out of the military or after their traumatic experience, I wouldn't have to do what I'm doing.
Exactly.
People wouldn't. Yes.
Right behind you.
And go ahead.
The EQUUS model, do you guys use other models or what kind of model?
You talking to me?
All the way down the line? I know the EQUUS model, but it is.
So I'm actually not certified EQUUS or PATH or any of that. our mental health professional is certified with, I'm going to probably get the name wrong, natural lightmanship, I think it is.
Lifemanship.
Yeah, thank you. And so we do, I have learned some of that along the way. But again, my part of the program is not actually the mental health part of it. It is to teach brain-based horsemanship, which happens to give them a path.
I got a
When-
You using Mustang.
Yes, sir.
So when you get a connection, or when that person that's in your program gets a connection, it's a true connection. It's not a trained.
Correct.
It's a lot of the programs, Julie covered. I mean, perfect, right? We had a program out here. We used different horses continuously. Julie and Caroline, they were big horses, thoroughbreds, that they tend, after 4 or 5 or 6 sessions, getting some of that negative energy into the horse, they tend to not want to do it anymore. But they tend to sour out, or not make a strong connection, or understand that it's a trained connection.
Yeah, so with how we protect our horses, even our I mean, and we do have a fresh rotation, but they're going to be with me, most of them 90 days. Some of the horses that have more traumatic experiences, like the whiskey I talked about earlier, who's been with me for 9 months. We're teaching the horse through our horsemanship program to be able to down-regulate itself. That's our actual goal with the horse. I don't have specific things. We do specific things before they go out for adoption, but I don't look for specific things. I'm looking more to have a horse that's going to have a foundation of being able to self-down-regulate itself. So when it's presented with a situation that it doesn't know is safe, it can go, oh, wait a second, I'm with this human, nothing's bad ever happened when I'm with this human, and it can relax itself out. Alex may be able to tell you a little bit about our story when we went to the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo 2 years ago with a Mustang, 2 Mustangs, and they showed us where we're going to do our demonstration, and it's in the back of the exhibit hall. Of course, I asked where the back door was, and they're like, no, you got to come in the front door. And I'm like, oh, well, this is going to be fun. And those guys did exactly what we wanted them to do. And that was, oh, wait, that flashing light, that kid running around worries me, but wait a second, I can get through that. That's exactly the same thing that we want our veterans to be able to do once they go through our program as well. And by them teaching the horse how to do that, they start to see that they can teach themselves to do that.
I want to tie in one more thing on the research. We all get excited about at least.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we get excited about the research. Yeah, and one reason for that is that the research that we have now can prove that it works. Alex and I have worked with the Colorado Judicial, and we did a presentation at the Judicial Conference a few years ago with all the judges, and their number one question is, okay, you say it works, how do I know it works? What's your evidence-based theories, and how do we know that? And the research now is exciting, because I think I can prove to you, if you're objective, I can prove to you it works. And that's really helpful when you're talking to law enforcement or firefighters or anybody. It's not, I mean, we use a PANAS test as well, which is more subjective. It's the little 5 smiley faces thing, and that's subjective. But when you have your heart rate variables or other, you meant,
Quantitative data.
no, your not cortisol.
Oxytocin.
No,
Heart rate variability.
no, cortisol. A cortisol test, that's objective.
Yeah.
You can't fudge that. So, anyway.
So I know one of you was talking about maybe working with the elderly a little bit. I've done some stuff with like music therapy with some elderly. I'm just wondering, I know that can be challenging sometimes. How do horses work with nursing home?
We took the horses to Anchor Nursing Home here in Aiken, and a couple of times I think we took them. And our horses have to be certified to go out in public, and so they have to be quiet, they have to stand still, and some of that they learn on the job, but we did the nursing home. We went in this little tiny square. I thought it was a little too tight, and they came out in the wheelchairs and stretchers, and we got as close as we could, and they petted the horses, and then we went to the little walk and went to the front of the building and lined up, and they brought out a man in a wheelchair, and they went to one of our horses, who's a very, very good horse, and the horse for some reason put his foot in the front of the wheelchair and then realized what he had done, started to pull back. Oh my gosh, this man was terrified. And we, got the foot out, and so at that point we realized we're not going to ride the horses at this kind of an event. We're going to, hand walk them. But it brought so much joy to those nursing home patients, and so, yeah.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. I was a 30-year EMT and did some EGALA training, and I found interesting your conversation about the therapy, the term. If you don't want to label anybody, this and that. But the other thing I did was through Dartmouth was got high ropes training and low ropes, where we would train the students coming in for Dartmouth Medical School, and it's about empowering. And they came in as timid four-year grads, starting a huge program. They're not trauma from drugs or PTSD or anything like that, but in some ways it was the same. They're being thrown into a study group, they don't know these people, they're panicking, and all of a sudden you get them up on a 40-foot high wire, and they find out they can do it. And which is what happened to me, even through my certification of it. And it's the empowering that they find, and that horses can give, without being overpowering to a horse, and knowing that there's going to be feedback. So it's an interesting sort of change. I did not get fully involved with EGALA because it's not really offered up in the Northeast too readily. It is out west. But then when the high ropes thing opportunity came along, as firefighter and EMT, we all jumped on it, or many jumped on it. And it's pretty amazing. Turn around and find somebody who goes really timid and nervous, and with some issues, to being walking away 2 days later going, I can't believe this is that. Use therapy.
One more question?
Anything else?
I'll say
How are we
something
on- how
about
are we on time?
Okay, let's talk about Mustangs. That's why we're here. So my Mustang, she's 12 years old, and this is all new to her, doing anything like this. And she's just been a gem. I mean, she's been amazing. But her personality, and my question is going to be to everyone else with Mustangs, her personality is such that when something scares her, she wants to approach it. And she approaches it, and then she's like, kind of like what you were talking about with the humans. So she'll approach danger. She doesn't run from it. The other thing is she's extremely lazy. So this job of walking around in the community and letting people pet her and touch her is like the perfect job for this Mustang. And my question is that a typical Mustang personality? Oh, I was going to talk about trust too. It did take her a while. You've got to get that trust from your horse, and then they'll do anything for you. And Mustangs take a little longer to, trust you. But so, Mustang personalities?
Scott, what do you think?
I guess. So I mean, if we look at it in our horsemanship, and learning, the Mustang and we'll use the Mustang since we're talking about Mustangs, it's been given two abilities. One, the ability to spook very easily, but also it will return because it's curious about that same thing that it just spooked about. And that's its way to evaluate safety. I mean, every decision the Mustang makes is about safety. So once we know that, then it becomes much easier to work with the Mustang. And it really is part of that learning process. If you watch us in our demonstrations, we're going to go to concerned curiosity, which is kind of what you were explaining, where she wants to go into what the very thing that she's afraid of, but we'll release our pressure. That's what she's going to do herself naturally, and then she's going to relax and learn that it was safe at that point in time, then probably walk right back to that same thing and get a little bit closer. And the only thing that we're going to do different is try to control it to optimum levels. She might not always do it to return to safety, which we're going to try to let her return completely to safety, stay immobile while she's processing, because she'll learn better just like we do. So.
I'll speak to that just a little bit. As my background, I consider myself an equine behavior specialist, and I think the gift that the Mustangs have is that they're unadulterated by humans.
They don't lie.
And they don't lie. They don't, the horses born in domestication, and I've seen this from, I mean, I've made my living training all kinds of horses, including Mustangs, but there's something about the Mustang that it is very straightforward. Safety is their number one thing. And I think too often, depending how a horse has been raised, safety might not be anywhere on their radar. They might be food driven, they might be pet driven, they might already, take the thoroughbreds, which I've done a bunch of work with off the track thoroughbreds. They're put in a stall usually by the age of 1 and put in really intense training. So their perception of the world is very different based on their experience. They tend to like claustrophobic spaces because they feel safe. The Mustang, forget it. Like claustrophobia, and particularly depending how the roundup went and what has happened to them since the roundup, or if they're being born in a holding facility, all of that shapes, is it nature or is it nurture? I think that is the $1 million question.
Any other questions?
But I do want to mention that there's a PBS documentary, it's a short documentary on a veterans program that's run outside of Chicago in Woodstock, Illinois, Patty Gruber. We're running the film tonight, The Mustangs, America's Wild Horses, but they have come in and done a short documentary on her woman's veterans program that she runs there. It just got nominated for an Emmy, so this is like super cool. So the facility is called Operation Wild Horse, and so but it's like really cool that this film has got nominated for an Emmy. So
That's amazing.
very, very good. So thank you.
Hang on, I want to get the last part in, the very important part. And no, I'm going to pass it because I think several other people are going to want to do the same thing. So our veterans program, we're a nonprofit Mustang Adoption Academy. We need funds to continue our veterans program. Find us at mustangadoptionacademy.com.
Thank you. Again, Horses and Humans Research Foundation, our mission is to fund the research to support these programs. And our website is www.horsesandhumans.org. So thank you.
And we're 10th Mountain Equine. Our website is 10me.org. And Alex over there and I are also doing a podcast. We hope to have our first podcast in mid-October. Our ranch is at 9,300 feet in the Colorado Rockies, and we're 6 miles off grid. So having horses off grid that high is just interesting. It's just different than other things that you have. So.
My organization is called Leg Up Experience, and we're here in Aiken, South Carolina. We are a nonprofit, and our website is legupexperience.org.
We're the Aiken Volunteer Mounted Unit. We have a Facebook page, Aiken Volunteer Aiken Unit, and a website, although we really need to work on our website. One thing I forgot to say is that we partner with the Large Animal Rescue Team here, and they are amazing. And so many people don't know about the Large Animal Rescue. They had to come under, I guess, our umbrella as we're a nonprofit, and because they're all sworn officers, you know, that's the way they had to do it. But you can tell people in Aiken about LART, Large Animal Rescue. They're so good.
And I'll just add one little closing story about that. As the guys came in, the gentleman that heads up that organization was at one of our initial meetings, and he said whenever there is a horse rescue, he selects 6 individuals, officers, to come and execute the rescue. But there I don't know how many, 25 or 30 are actually trained to do that. And he said what happens is after the rescue, the ones that didn't get to attend are really angry with them. So that just prompted us. I said, well, if these guys are really getting a lot out of rescuing horses that are in dire straits, imagine what they'll get out of a horse that isn't in dire straits. So it's really neat. I think we have such a cool panel here. Everybody's intermixed with the mission and the goal to help horses, help people, help horses. So,
Right, thank you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you.